Hey, this is Rodney at the Rod Shop, and in this video we're going to be looking on how to change the rear brakes on a Honda Nighthawk 450. So in this video we're going to be changing the rear brakes, which are shoes, as you can see, on a 1986 Honda 450. This process is going to be the same from Honda 50's all the way up to whatever 750. I'm not sure when I think even the all older bikes had shoes on them, even fronts. So the process is going to be the same. However, like this bike has a center stand and the Honda 50 doesn't, or like a Honda XL70 or XR75, those don't have center stands. So that makes it easier. If not, if it's a smaller bike, you can put it up on a crate. Let's dive into the video and let's see how it's done. You just spring your arm back, and you can spin the nut, adjustment nut off. And you got to disconnect your stabilizer arm. It's actually what holds the hub of your brakes stationary. Remove the cotter key. And this stabilizer bar down here is a 12mm nut. And pay attention to how this comes apart. It's like a insulator and a washer and then the nut. Brake. These are 10mm. Anytime you're working on a motorcycle, try to use a 6-point. The reason being is I've seen so many people use 12 points, and if they don't, the wrench is worn out or the nut's worn out, they put rounded marks on this stuff and it makes it not look neat. I guess motorcycles in some way are kind of like models or like, toys. This may take two if it, yeah, there it goes. Broke free. And you back your adjusters up to get freedom so you can slide your axle bolt out. Pretty much, as long as you don't back your nuts up a lot, you just back them up just a little bit, you'll be able to put it back pretty close. But like I said, anytime you take the wheel loose, you're going to want to readjust the chain. Sometimes they get jammed in there where they don't want to come free. Use a brass hammer, don't use a metal hammer. Sometimes if it gets real stiff, you can take a block of wood and throw up under your wheel. If you can get one that's tall enough, you have to take several pieces. What you're going to do is it's just going to kind of take weight off the wheel from wanting to fall. Then you'll have to get a punch. Now, you don't have to take any more out. It's a good time to check your bearings too. But I've already had this wheel up and spun it, and it doesn't make any noise. But if you spin it back here and you hear some noise or it feels rough, your bearings, you've got bearings in here that can go bad that you want to replace. And what we can do is take a rag with some brake cleaner or carburetor or whatever, and just wipe all the dust down. Inspect your drum, make sure it's not eaten up or anything. Of course, you can tell by your shoes. These shoes are getting worn down, they're thin. They're not down to the metal or anything. No metal's been touching it, so it's fine. We're gonna have to remove this cotter key, and then we'll disassemble the brakes. This is a cotter key remover for stubborn cotter keys. Just kind of expand it a little bit. You want to pay attention to how the spring was on, or both springs. That one come loose but it's still hanging, so just pay attention to which direction. Sometimes most of the time it doesn't really matter, just as long as it clips, but I always try to put them back the way they were. I'm gonna go blow this off a little bit better. You want to make sure these are underneath these little tabs that stick out. They have to be underneath it. And here, these have to be inside the groove. Once they're on, I put a washer and we'll do a cotter key. I'm going to get a new cotter key. That one didn't seem good to me. This cotter key, being that size, was just a little bit long, so we're going to cut that off. Some brake systems do not even use a cotter key. It actually has double tabs where it just slips under. Now this is ready to go back on. Okay, if you don't have a air compressor, you can always use a canned air. You're not trying to blow it out, blast it hard. Just now the fun part comes to knocking that back on. Now what I've done is I got my finger over on the hub, and when I felt it start going through, I stopped. Put my spacer back in. What I was watching for is for the head of that to come back through, because I need to get this back up there. Coming on through. And just so you know, it's shouldered, shanked, and that sits on it, and you don't want it, you want to pivot on that. This bolt that sticks through the hub that goes into this stabilizer bar, it's got a shoulder and it's shanked. This has to go up on the shank like that. And the reason why you want this washer and insulator is the washer tightens down on that shank. It doesn't tighten down on the stabilizer bar. If for whatever reason you put something on here that locks this solid with the hub, this bolt's going to break. And because your suspension's going up and down, this has to, when your wheel goes up, your hub's going to go forward. Most people don't realize that, but that's how that system works. Sometimes after you put the new shoes on, you cannot get it to flex enough to put the rod back on, so you have to let your hub swing out a little bit, which is perfectly fine. I'm ensuring that that is on the shank because, like I said, I've seen where people don't do it right and it breaks that bolt. Now, I highly recommend adjusting the chain and the your brake with the bike on the ground, because with the sway arm dropped all the way down, things are not going to be completely adjusted correctly. If you noticed, it's gonna, I don't know if you can see them in the camera, but there are notches on here, and then there's notches on the sway arm, the rear fork arm here. This notch is lined up perfectly with this notch on the arm. So what I'm going to do is go on the other side and make sure it's that way. The chain is a little loose to me, so it's time to tighten it anyway. So I'm going to bump it up. And you tighten it. Actually, it's time to change the chain on this. The rule of thumb is the chain shouldn't move more than 3/4, maybe an inch at the most, up and down. And you can't see what I'm doing, but that's what it is. It's got about that much of flexibility. If you're going to double people, make it an inch, because the more weight that you add on the bike, the further it goes up, the more it pulls on the chain. And you have to adjust your chain first before you can do the adjustment on the brakes. And they're right even with each other. So. Now you got to tighten down your axle shaft. It's 19 on one side and 22 on the other. Now with a 14mm wrench, you want to adjust the brake, although you probably can push it up with your hands so it kind of comes to a stop. Now they give you these adjustments on how far the pedal should travel. Don't pay attention to what the books say. What you're going to want to do is put your foot up on your peg and put your foot on the brake and see what's comfortable with you. Some people like more free play. Some people want it to touch as soon as they touch the thing. You just don't want it to drag. It's got to have some free play so the back brakes doesn't drag. But before, this was way up here because the pads were, or the shoes were worn out. It's okay to set it a little high because it's going to break in, but that's how you do rear brakes on a Nighthawk 450. So that's all there is to just changing out the rear brakes on a Honda Nighthawk 450. If you have a 400, 450, CM, CB, any of those type of bikes, like I said, this applies to almost any type of rear shoe brake on it, almost any model motorcycle, but this is for a fact the way Hondas work. So what do you think? Do you think that looked like it was fairly easy? Do you think that any do-it-yourself mechanic can put rear shoes? I actually like working in motorcycles far better than I do cars. It's cleaner, it's easier, quicker. I mean, you couldn't put shoes on a car that quick. I don't think I spent more than 45 minutes changing it out. I'm sweating like everything because it's 85 degrees and almost 70% humidity in this garage. We're under a tremendous heat wave. Anyhow, let me know what you think about doing the shoes. If you have a better procedure or problems you run into, or if you need help, just be sure to let me know in the comments, and I usually always reply back to my comments. So I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, be sure to like and subscribe, and always check back because I'm always working on something crazy. See you in the next one.